Hi traders, and welcome back to IFX, and on today's lesson we're going to talk about how we can now use the moving averages as a trend, right? Yesterday we talked about the higher time frame blocks, and today we're just gonna see how we can use the moving averages as a trend to enter on a reversal block or the trend block, right? So is it possible to use both higher time frame blocks and moving averages together? Well, we're gonna take a look at that and see how we can actually better our entries. So let's move on and let's take a look at the graph. Let's just go before we move. It's always important that you understand what time frame are you going to enter and what type of trend time frame are you going to be using. Okay, it's very, very important. Remember, the higher the time frame, the less entries you're going to get. Now we have a lot of different type of moving averages, and we're only going to talk about here the exponential 200 moving average, okay, right over here. And I use a lot the simple moving average, the 13 and the 21, but on your own you can actually research more on the other ones that I have posted in here, and there are many more. I'm sure you might know of many others that I probably don't even know about, but very simple. We're just gonna make it as simple as I can using the 200 moving average and then also using these two right over here. So with that being said, now let's take a look in here on the 4-hour right over here on pound dollar, and let me just erase right over here this 21. So what do we see? What is it that we're looking for? Just like how we spoke on the previous lesson, is that we are looking for, when we get a block, we're looking for pullbacks. Well, it's the same thing, right? Moving averages, there are many ways to see it, and we have crosses, we have trends, and just many ways to trade the moving average. The way I'm going to teach you or let you know is that once the moving average or the candle closes below, for this example, closes below the moving average, what we're doing is we're waiting for the price to go down, have a pullback as close as we can to the moving average, and then get an entry somewhere close to here on the smaller time frame to be able to get this nice move, right? So all we're doing is waiting again for another pullback as close as we can to the moving average, looking for M15 reversal blocks or trend blocks somewhere around here to be able to manage these moves. Of course, this is already happened. We don't know when the market is going to have such nice moves like this, but all what we're saying is once we get the market crosses the moving average, what we're looking for is pullback entries, right, as close as we can to the moving average. Now, when does the issue arise? The issue comes about when we get entry somewhere in here, another entry somewhere in here, somewhere another entries in here. Why are we going to get entries? Because we're telling the EA, look for anything that's below the moving average, and whenever you get a reversal block or trend block, then enter. So of course the market does not know, the EA does not know that we already have a couple pullbacks. The market has such a strong move to the downside, and most likely we are some support, right? So we need to understand that once we analyze and say after some couple of pullbacks, we need to stop the EA trading and then look for another strategy, right? Why? Because we might get entries in here, which I'm going to show you examples, and we want to avoid this. We want to avoid entries. If anything, we want to enter again as close as we can to the moving average, right, to be able to get some sort of pullback. So with that, it's very, very important. That's why we can never let the EA work alone. Just like how we cannot really work alone and be able to manage 20 pairs, is really also hard for the EA to actually know what is going on in the market. So if we don't tell it, if we don't pretty much say, listen, stop now trading, we put it on manual, we reassess the market conditions, and then we actually take a look at what's going on, and then we stop looking for selling opportunities because we already took advantage of what the market had to offer. Okay, so now let's take a look at some examples. of what we have used as filters. Okay, so right now this is very raw entries, still filters. Pretty much what I used was the M15 reversal block entry, right, on 60. And then also just very simple, we use the 4-hour time frame 200 exponential moving average. So it gave me 13 entries. Some of them were good, some of them are really bad. Like over here, it gave me a buy entry. Why? Because we were above the moving average. And then it gave me a buying entry, which we had to be able to manage it, right? So anything after that, I was able to get a lot of sell entries. When does the issue come about? Right over here, right? As 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 entries that I was getting to sell because, it was reversal and 15 reversal entries. So when, again, maybe the only best entry was really this one. If anything, this one right over here. Right over here, this was really, really bad entries that, like I said, if you weren't aware of what the market has already given you, you would just have stopped the EA working and looking for this type of entries right now. We will have to be looking for another type of strategy, which we're gonna go over on the next following lessons. So one thing that you need to understand, and is very, very important, is that just for one example, right over here on this candle is crossing the moving average. Okay, so the EA, yes, we could be above the moving average, but the EA only takes into account when the candle has actually closed. Okay, so we might get an entry somewhere in the middle of this sell entry and somewhere in the middle of this candle. Why? Because although it is still above the moving average, it has not closed yet above the moving average. You could just easily go above and then come back down. So the EA will only take into account when the actual candle has actually closed. So it's same thing in here. We might get a buying opportunity somewhere in the middle of this candle. Although it's already below the moving average, we might get a buying opportunity only until it actually closes. So if you get a buying entry, a selling entry in here, you might say, oh, this is wrong. Well, it's not wrong. It's just that at the time, yes, we were above the moving average, but we got a selling entry on a 15. Why? Because this candle was still moving, was still active. Okay, so that is very important that you need to understand. Okay, so we got 13 entries with very raw filters, just very raw entries, and we were able to see that we got really good entries, but some of them were really bad as well. So is there anything that we can do about this? Well, let's take a look and see on more examples. Right over here, I used again the reversal block. I used the only thing that I added was the 21 simple moving average on M15. Okay, so in here we still got I still got this bad entry in here, was still unavoidable, and now the only thing that I was able to kind of manage that was really bad was in here, right? On the previous example, we got like 6 entries. Now we got 3 that maybe out of these 3, only 1 would have worked out. And then we would have to eventually be able to see how we could manage these selling entries opportunities in here. So maybe if you got a selling opportunity in here, you would have gotten at a loss, and then maybe just kind of see really what the market is doing and kind of wait on the EA, kind of like put it on manual, reassess the market, and wait if it gets closer to the MA to be able to look for selling opportunities again. Okay, so that is very, very important when you actually let the EA work on its own. So in here we got 8 trades, much better than the previous one, just by adding one simple filter, which was the 21 simple moving average. So we're using 2 types of moving averages on the same time frame and as a trend on a higher time frame. Okay, simple. Now let's take a look at another example, just kind of tweaking the the information, right? The settings. So now instead of getting now using the reversal block, I use the trend block, which with the same setting as the previous example, and pretty much the changes was not major. We got one more extra, and the previous one we got 3, and now we got 4, and the sellings in here were pretty much more or less the same, and we still got this one right over here, which was not a good entry. So the difference was not much. We just got a one extra trade, which was actually in here. So that's just one thing to know. You know, sometimes the trend and the reversal blocks do differ, but in here pretty much, you know, the entries pretty much is what differs, you know, where it enters, you know, how low and how high does it going to enter. All right, so now let's be more creative and let's just see what we can do. Let me just close this. Okay, so now we're going to be using something different, and you can actually do this on the EA. So the only creative thing in here that I did was we kept the M15. Now I changed it to M15 reversal block because I kind of see that I got a better entry, better price. And the only thing that I did, which maybe 24 might be too less, which 4-hour time frame, 24 and 200. So now instead of using a moving average on the same time frame of entry, all I did was I changed it around and say whenever the price is below or above the 24 and 200, then look for a reversal block entry. So right over here, we were able, again, I was never able to avoid this entry right here. And again, I kind of got the same entries. This was one of the examples I have told you about. I got a sell entry in here because this candle was still active. You know, it needs to close to be able to know that we're already above this moving average. So that's one of the things that you need to know. So although it happened above the 24, it still has not closed yet at the time of entry. So that's one of the things that you need to know. Now, the same thing happened right over here. We still got 1, 2, 3 entries that were bad. The same thing with this one. It was an active candle that it was unavoidable. It was still, the candle was the entry. Well, the candle was still open, so it was hard to say. So anything after that, pretty much it didn't enter anymore. Why? Again, because the price needs to be below these two different moving averages. You can actually maybe change it around, maybe make it a little bit bigger, like 50, between 250. That could be one example, right? So whenever the price is below the 50 and 200, then look for selling opportunities. It's still, you know, this is something that is unavoidable right at this moment using moving averages. You know, again, you have to really do your analysis. So this is really neat. I added an extra filter on the EA, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. So this is, you know, this is how you get creative with the market. You know, what you want the EA to do, what is it that you want it to do, and then that the EA would perform that. Okay, so now lastly, the only example, okay, so in the previous one we got 8 entries, which was not much of a difference from the previous examples. Now this one right here, this is very different. Now in here I added that M15 reversal block and the M15 13 simple moving average, right? So I want this filter, and then I also added a reversal, higher time frame reversal block. So right over here, this would be the reversal block, right? And under the 100 settings, and then I also did the higher time frame 200 exponential moving average. Okay, so now this is interesting. I was finally able to get rid of that buy, sell, buy opportunity in here. Why did I was able to avoid it now? Because now we're following a higher time frame block. Okay, So finally I was able to get rid of that buying opportunity in here. Now we got 1, 2, and 3 selling entries that were really good selling entries. I was really happy with those entries, but we were still able to avoid, out of all of this, remember we had like before we had like 6 entries, when we were able to reduce it to 3, and then pretty much 3 was the most that we were able to reduce it. Now we only got 1. Why? Because we still don't have a higher time frame reversal block, which actually it would be formed right over here after this candle. So that's why anything after this, it was not going to look for selling opportunities anymore until we get another bearish block. So although we are below the 200 moving average, it's not going to look for now selling entries, because now we have a bullish block. So the only way I was able to get a bad entry was over here, which, you know, if we were actively looking at the market, we will hopefully be able to avoid it quick, and then that's it. Anything after that, then that's it. We don't get anything bad of those entries, right? We will look for another type of strategy. So this is really neat. So yes, it is possible to combine 2 higher time frame trends. So you can use a block, and then you can also use a moving average. So you can be creative and use any other type of moving average. You can use the 50, you can use, I mean, like I said, you can just get creative yourself, and then from there on, you know, you start to see what is it that the market is giving you, right? So that's that. With these examples, we were able to go from like 13 entries, 13 trades, just by using this type of settings, to actually minimize it to 4 trades, pretty much within the same settings, you know, just tweaking it around, you know. So you need to learn and understand how the market behaves, what type of trends are we looking for, and this is going to differ on pairs. There are different pairs that range more than others, so this is very important that you actually analyze some pairs and see how they behave. Okay, so now lastly, we're just going to look at the how is actually going to look on the EA, right? So the main thing in here, again, we have the entry, right? The entry strategy, which is right over here. We're going to choose the type of block that we're going to trade. Keep this as false, this entry, a block, candle high and low. Keep it as false. Right now, we're not going to talk about this. I have made a change already, so we're not going to talk about this as of yet. So we can choose what type of trend, what type of block are we going to enter, right? What type of time frame. Then after that, we're going to either, you can now, on the previous example, we have talked about the higher time frame block. So you can choose if you want a higher time frame block filter. You already see the examples. If you're trading 15 minutes, you can choose 1 hour, or you can choose 4 hours, and then you choose the block that you want and the settings that you want. And of course, the maximum days old. For the previous example that I given you, the last example, I used 15 days for the 4-hour block. Okay, now what's the next thing? We have filter number 4. So filter number 4, you can use it on pretty much on higher time frame or same time frame, right? Entry time frame. So what do I mean by entry time frame? The entry time frame means if you choose here 15 minutes to enter on a block, then you can use the filter number 4, choose here true, 15 minutes, you choose whatever period that you want, 13, 21, simple, exponential, whatever it is that you like, you put it in here. But you can also now change it to a higher time frame as well. But we have another filter, like I said, that I added, that now I got rid of a filter that I was not really happy with, and I added filter number 7. I interchange it with filter with the Bollinger. I didn't like the Bollinger, so I interchange it with a higher time frame. So filter number 7 and these two filters are pretty much the same exact thing. So you can get creative, and then you can use 4 hour and 4 hour. You know, you can choose 4 hour in here with X period, and then 4 hour here with an X period. So meaning that if price is below those two moving averages, then it's going to look for a block entry. If you choose in here 15 minutes and 4 hours, then price needs to be above those two moving averages and in those two different time frames. Okay, so you can get really creative. You can also use it on a small time frame, right? So again, you know, it's all about being creative in here. So if I go to 15 minutes, then I can use the 200 moving average as a trend on the same time frame, and then I can add in here the 13 simple, and pretty much you can do that as well. So this is just one quick example. Price or the block happen, not the block, but the block entry happen above the 13 and above the 200. So this would have been a good entry based on this strategy, right? Based on these two moving averages. You know, I'm not saying this is the one that you need to use. I have not really tested this, you know, same time frame moving averages entry. I only use one, but you can actually test it yourself and see what is it that you like. Or you can use again just 15 minutes and then use higher time frame 4 hour trend, right? Just like how we have spoken before. So it's very simple. Don't complicate it. Test it when you have time. You know, it's fun when you actually test things. You know, when you find you have endless and endless combinations in here. And that's pretty much it, traders. So again, you always choose in here what type of block you're going to enter, and then now pretty much on the MA we have filter number 4 and then filter number 7 that are the same exact things that you can change it around with whatever that you want. So as a summary, now we could use block entry. This is not what I want right here. We can use a block entry using higher time frame blocks and moving averages. So moving averages is where you get creative using higher time frame or same time frame, 2 moving averages or only 1 moving average, and that's it, right? Or you can use this only, or you can actually do block retest only using a higher time frame moving average. Again, endless combinations that you can play around. And then, you know, that's pretty much it. So you were able to see the differences on the different examples that we just talked about. Yes, we did not talk about block retest, but you can actually try to test it yourself. So let me know if you have any questions. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and join the Telegram channel where you can ask all your questions and I try to answer them as much as I can. And just subscribe, and I'll see you on the next lesson.